What do we think, folks? We ready to get the show on the road? Yeah? Those salads look delicious. You should have the aerial view of it all. I'm Steve Cole. I'm really just some guy, but I have one of the coolest jobs in town. I get to be the Economic Development Director for the Plymouth Economic Development Foundation. Hold your applause. We have some board members in the room I want to acknowledge. We have Lee Hartman, Town Director of Planning and Community Development. We have Amy Naples, Executive Director of the Chamber of Commerce. Jay Kimball, Woods Seafood. Hi, Jay. We have Town Manager Derek Brindisi. Kevin O'Reilly, America's own. Kevin O'Reilly is here. And also Representative Matt Moratori. I'm also very glad to welcome Kahir Laharli from Donegal. Gary Martin, my counterpart, Economic Development Director for Donegal. John Buckley, Register of Deeds. John, thank you for making the connection with our Donegal friends, truly, and our friends at the Cape Cod Commissioners. Greg Hanley is here. I was just talking a moment ago to Senator Moran. Thank you for coming, Senator. We also have Representative Kathy Lenatra, and I'm sure there's at least one or two other really cool and important people who I haven't made eye contact with, but I will mention them if I'm corrected when I get off the stage. So just a little bit of background about the Economic Development Foundation. There's 13 board members. I like to joke that Jesus did so much more with just 12. But we have a great cross-section of government, state and local level, as well as small business owners. So part of our goal, of course, is to not just diversify Plymouth's economy, but also to encourage entrepreneurship, things that pay higher wages. We all know we're in a bit of a housing crisis or a crunch. We all know there's a couple of ways you can resolve for things like this, like you pay down the costs, or you can ensure an opportunity for market rate wages that can pay market rate rates for housing and apartments. I want to interrupt myself to say that Representative Josh Cutler just joined us. Josh, thank you for coming. One of the focus areas for the conference this year is on entrepreneurship. Frankly, it's always on entrepreneurship. But this year especially, we're focusing on the compendium of what really does mean, what we mean by a blue economy. It's been intangible for the most part. We intend to make it tangible. And in Plymouth, it runs the gamut from aquaculture, very recognizable, low-hanging fruit, so to speak, all the way to AI and robotics. You would be amazed to learn about the things that we're doing here in Plymouth. In fact, you will be amazed by the things we're doing in Plymouth. You're gonna hear about them over the next couple of days. Let's see, our goal is to inform and entertain you. I think that the amount of information you'll receive today not just will inform you about the industry itself, but the things that are happening in Plymouth. We have amazing partners, and we have wonderful sponsors who Michelle is gonna tell you about in just a moment. But we're gonna showcase Plymouth's leadership in aquaculture, AI, and robotics during this conference. I'm gonna tell you a little story in just a moment about our corporate, or our conference logo. Before that, Michelle, do you have some remarks you'd like to make?
I do.
All right.
Good afternoon. I'm Michelle Pecoraro, and I am the consultant to this conference. And I love working with Stephen Cole. So we intend to do this many, many years into the future. But first, I can't read without these. But first I want to thank our many sponsors. We couldn't do this without our sponsorship. So I want to thank Cape Cod Community College for sponsoring this lunch today. They also are a legacy sponsor. They sponsored last year. Holtec International, tomorrow's breakfast. Green Sea IQ, which is sponsoring the lunch and the tech demos at Green Sea IQ at Cordage Park on Tuesday. Northeastern Savings Bank is sponsoring our Ugly Fish, Nosh and Networking. If you bought your tickets or have tickets to that, we will see you there tonight at the Cork and Table Restaurant, which is walking distance from here. Green Sea IQ, by the way, is also a legacy sponsor. I wanted to make that clear. The student session this morning was so wonderful. Everybody who was on the panel was very engaged. The students were very engaged. Massasoit Community College sponsored that session. Tiny & Sons Glass is sponsoring all of your refreshment breaks for the whole conference, and they are a legacy sponsor as well. Then we have our breakouts and our policy roundtable. We have New England Aquarium here. We're very pleased to have them for the first time this year. Cape Cod 5 is back as a legacy sponsor. Vineyard Wind is a new sponsor this year. Promare Incorporated is back as a legacy sponsor. We have Cape Cod Cooperative, the Cooperative Bank of Cape Cod, back as a legacy sponsor. And the Plymouth Chamber of Commerce, who is sponsoring your conference tech, and the gentleman in the back there at Moonrise. I have a few housekeeping. I love that I get to do the housekeeping. Be sure to visit the resource tables of our partners that are all out in the lobby area. We want to thank our wonderful volunteer corps, the Plymouth Navigators, which is under the leadership of Isabella Rose and hosted by the Plymouth Area Chamber of Commerce. Thank you very much. We just thank the many partners, speakers on all of our panels for giving of their time to come here and to do this with us. Please go to the conference website and you will see a large list of our partners. And as I mentioned before, the Cork and Table Restaurant is where the Nosh and Networking event is from 5:30 to 7 tonight. And if you have any questions about where you might want to go to dinner after that, you can go to the Sea Plymouth table out front and find out where the great restaurants are in Plymouth. We have a lot of them. And finally, and I know this is trivial, however, your lanyards and name tags, there's a big basket. If you would put those in the basket before you leave the conference for good. If you're coming back tomorrow, then you don't need to do that until tomorrow, but we like to collect those back up. And that's it. So we hope you enjoy this general session, again, sponsored by Cape Cod Community College. Thank you.
So I know Michelle said that we couldn't do this without our sponsors, and that is true. But you know, we also couldn't do this without Michelle Pecoraro, or Mike Cahill from the town of Plymouth, or Mark Reel from the town of Plymouth. Could we give them a round of applause as well? And that's the last you guys are gonna get. So I'm very pleased to spend the next couple of moments explaining to you our logo. Here's our mission statement for the Plymouth Foundation. Thank you so much for joining us. We want to talk to you, though, about a gentleman, Henry David Thoreau. He spent some time in Plymouth in 1857. Some of you are nodding, which means you know this. He said a lot in his journal. He said so much, but some of the most important things, some most impactful things he tells us that Mr. Watson tells him that he learns from pretty good authority that Webster once saw the sea monster. It seems it was first seen in the bay between Manomet and Plymouth Beach. And when I heard that, I thought this. But this is not what we saw. In fact, he went ahead and he described a little further. He said, by a perfectly reliable witness who was accustomed to look out on the sea with his glass every morning, the first thing as regularly as he ate his breakfast. One morning he saw this monster with a head somewhat like a horse's, raised some 6 feet above the water, and his body the size of a cask trailing behind. What's interesting about that description is it actually fits the Celtic Gaelic tradition of the Kelpie. We had a student session earlier today, and some of the kids in the room played video games and recognized the Kelpie immediately from God of War. You might recognize it as a 90-foot statuary in Scotland or from any one of these depictions, but the idea of this myth was largely intended, from what I understand, to deter people from going to the boggy marshes in the coastal areas. It was an anti-drowning campaign. It was telling kids not to go near the waters because the Kelpie might lure you to its back and dive deep into the sea below. And incidentally, Mr. Thoreau goes on. He was careering over the bay, chasing the mackerel, which ran ashore in their fright and were washed and died up in great numbers. The story is that Mr. Webster had appointed to meet some Plymouth gentlemen at Manomet and spend the day fishing with them. On the way home, they saw the sea serpent, which answered to the common account. There was a common account of this thing. It was pretty well known. But why didn't we know about it until recently? Well, Thoreau covers that too, because after the gentleman had some time to think about what he had just seen, he said, "For God's sake, never say a word about this to anyone. For if I should be known that I have seen the sea serpent, I should never hear the end of it." And then he goes on to say he'll have to tell the story to everyone he meets. And there you see, it has not been leaked out till now. Is there anything more classically New England than to say, I saw something remarkable with my own eyes and I trust them, but I'm not saying a word about it? One of the other elements, though, about the sea monster myth that we wanted to embrace was that no one got hurt by it, so we can celebrate it a little bit. What you see there is who we call Thoreau. Thoreau introduced us to the sea monster, he codified it, he reminded us about it, and so we honor the man by naming the monster Thoreau. You see here a block print style. Its flourished tail represents a P for Plymouth, and it has the kelp kind of style designs coming off of its tail. Pretty cool design, huh? And merchandisable. So I invite you all to visit Bob Nolette from Manomet at the merch table, and he'll tell you all about that weird fish chicken thing. There's one more dimension that I want to share, though. Actually, no, before I even do that, if you like this design, and I think you should show me by applause, yes? There's one person in the room I want to make sure you know about. Deb Walsh over there in the green shirt is responsible for bringing the vision to life. She made Thoreau happen. Deb, thank you so much for making us a merchandisable tagline and a product. So, into the other dimension. One of the elements of the Pilgrim story that I've always appreciated, that I think doesn't get enough representation, is the entrepreneurial elements. It's the deep-seated, intrepid, bold entrepreneurial personality who, if you believe, frankly, that a ghost man in the sky is dictating every detail of your life, you almost certainly believe that there is a demon in the deep that is responsible for sinking ships. These folks looked at the maps, and every map of the time had these types of creatures on it. They sailed those oceans despite that threat. And if you forgot a hairbrush, by the way, you're not going to Walgreens. You had to make it. One of the elements of the Plymouth story that I love so much is the entrepreneurial elements of the Pilgrim story. And you can see here, they had to pay for the boat. This is someone trying to figure out how to carry the one and cover the check. They had to pay back investors. Here you have a map that shows a little bit about what some of the sea monsters that we were talking about, right? This is a commonplace thing that they saw, and they still got on that boat and they made their journal. One thing I want to mention about the sea monster, sea dragon, sea myth, whatever it is, what you see here is a depiction of St. George slaying a rather modest-sized dragon. I mean, it's not really much bigger than the horse, but look, it's a dragon, okay? Dragons, in this case, they represent problems. What do entrepreneurs do? They solve problems. The real big problems are the threat to us, and that's essentially what we're up against. Thoreau, in many ways, is not just a barrier to entry for an entrepreneur. It represents the problem that you should be coming to Plymouth to help solve, especially as it exists in the blue economy. The other element that you see there next to St. George, well, that's Don Quixote, and he told people that he slayed dragons too. Well, we know he was hunting, windmills. What kind of an entrepreneur are you? Are you solving real problems, or are you just telling people you are? If you're here to solve real problems, Plymouth is a place where you can start your company, you can grow your company. We have the raw talent, we have the resources, we have the policies, we have the public officials, and we have the partners. So if you're interested, or if you know someone who's interested in starting a business in Plymouth, well, take a look at our beautiful coastline. We're ready for you. We have 37 miles. Thank you so much for letting me tell you the story about Thoreau. Thank you, Deb, for bringing it to life. And at this time, I would like to welcome to the stage our very most august Senator, Susan Moran, who is on the Economic Development and Emerging Technologies Committee. Susan, thank you for opening our conference with us.
It is one of my favorite events to come here. This has grown tremendously, and it personifies bringing the entire district together. As most of you know, I represent, of course, Plymouth, but 4 communities on both sides of the Cape Cod Canal. And for example, we've talked about Boston, the aquarium. We've got some folks from, Salem coming up here. When we look at the opportunities, and don't forget Donegal, when we look at the opportunities that the ocean brings, we think about conservancy, we think about stewardship, we think about entrepreneurialism and education. And what do all of these things have in common with all of you? It's collaboration. This event is about being in the same room and being able to talk about your ideas, talk about your inventions. My office at Cordage Park, to be right where the Green Sea is, and to be bumping into, of all things, robots, to hear conversations about AI. This is exactly where it's happening. It's in Plymouth, and I do have to say hi to Rep. Muraturi, who's come in, but of course, Senate President Therese Murray as well at the table, and talk about, yes. You know, we also want to think about the trailblazers, and I look at many of you here, trailblazing in terms of trade, looking beyond Massachusetts, taking an idea and just by the sheer will of it, making it happen. That's Terry Murray's legacy, and it's terrific to have her here today and to bring that forward along with our other legislative partners. I don't want to skip over the fact that it's nuts and bolts, it's time away from families, it's about the vision, it's about the belief that you can do it, and the leaders in that realm are our chambers. So it's my pleasure and honor to introduce, coming in, Katie Atkinson, the Economic Development Director from the Cape Cod Chamber. And it just is a joy for me to bring my entire district together at this event. Katie, thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator, and thank you so much, Stephen. She said my name is Katie Atchison, Economic Development Director of the Cape Cod Chamber of Commerce and of the Cape Cod Blue Economy Foundation. And I want to tell, just back up, how many of you were here last year? Hi again. I've been in this role for just a little over a year, and I invited myself to this conference as sort of my first step into learning really what blue economy means. And so I showed up. I didn't know who I wouldn't know. There's probably like Tammy. I probably just sort of hung around Tammy the whole time until I started meeting people. And I'm sitting in the back and I'm watching, and Steve Cole gets up and he starts talking, and I went, I know Steve Cole. Steve Cole and I were in freshman biology together in high school. We graduated from Nauset Regional High together, although he doesn't like to admit that he had any time to do with the Cape. So I'm sitting watching him make fun of Cape Cod for about 10 minutes, which was an absolute joy. But so over that past year, I've gotten to know a lot of you. I've gotten to know more of you even better. And one of the absolute joys has been getting to build the relationships, to piggyback on what Senator Moran was saying about how collaboration is key to all of our work. The message this morning I didn't get to hear firsthand, but that it was about, we're in the business of people, right? We work together to get things done. So the foundation is a very similar economic focus as Stephen's Plymouth Foundation. And one of the interesting things about our foundation is it was formed around a grant project focused on blue economy. And so from that project, we've grown. And I was handed post-pandemic a really cool event that I'll talk about that has to do a lot with the 2 tables of people right up here. And a lot of relationships, a lot of emails that had to be rebuilt post-pandemic. So it's been a really, really fascinating and interesting journey for me. And one of the things that we've done over the last year as I've started to learn is to actually build some objectives, right? And I'd like to point out one of my board members, Steve Tom at the back there, thank you for representing the Blue Economy Foundation. Some of my coworkers at the Cape Cod Chamber, Chanel and Paige, are here as well. So as we go through, and I won't take up too much time because this isn't the Cape Cod Chamber's event, I know. But we're very grateful to be able to work with Plymouth. Training the future. So how many of you were here specifically for the booths for the student experience this morning? This is an interactive talk. This is yeah. So I hear there are about 100 engaged students asking questions. This is where it starts for all of us, is reaching out to young people, helping them recognize how many opportunities there are in Blue Economy and STEM. Happy STEM Week, is that right? Happy STEM Week, yeah, woo. So really training the future, and as much about teaching the future what their opportunities are, which is so valuable. If someone had told me when I was in high school that I could learn to fly a plane and go shark spotting for a living, I would not be talking right now. Promoting industry. We're all here in this room together, coming together from different backgrounds, different industries to talk about how we're all connected, creating a sense of blue identity, which is so valuable as we're all still such young foundations. Almost every Blue Economy Foundation I've run into so far is still under that 10-year mark, right? We're still up-and-comers, right? And then influencing regulations is something that we're working on, developing what are those regulations, how do we fit in, how many ideas can I actually steal from Stephen as I continue to move forward. So the first one, Waterworks, this is where we start to train the future. So round of applause for everyone here at these two tables at the Cape Cod Community College, please, for hosting this event. For putting in so much time and effort. We had invited 400 students last year, and we had about 320 show up in sideways rain, which was incredible. And so anyone that wants a second opportunity to meet young people who hasn't been invited to Waterworks in the past, please let me know. And we will be, we've got a very strong tentative date of January 16th, thanks to the community college's efforts. And my inbox is primarily at Cape Cod EDU, so it's very exciting for me. But this is an incredible opportunity to engage with young people. This is the real big idea that I stole from Stephen, the real big blue idea. So in the spring just passed, how many of you made it to the Cape Cod's Big Blue Conference? Okay. How many of you are going to go to this one? Okay, I saw you. All right. So in the spring, we'll be hosting our second event. Fortunately, we had so many opportunities to hear from so many incredible people, many of them that are in this room, some that you'll hear speak today. It's the same thing. I literally stole the format from Stephen. I came to this event last year and went, that looks great. Let's do that. Thank you, Michelle. We put together this conference to bring this energy back every 6 months. So we're not just meeting once a year, we're meeting every 6 months. So I encourage you all to come again. We'll be doing some fun stuff with electrification, okay? Get that electric slide song in your head, right? It's electric. Okay. And then as we start to talk about how we're navigating policies and understanding what it means to be a blue economy, we're working on identifying what is blue, right? You can ask anyone in this room, what's blue to you, and the answer will be different. And that's really exciting and really cool. So we're getting nerdy about numbers and putting some actual data together. So I wanted to thank you again for allowing me some time on your stage, Stephen, for letting me steal all your ideas. If anyone's witnessed any of Stephen's work and thinks it was a good idea that I should steal, I would encourage you to come speak to me. This is an infiltration mission. But genuinely, anyone that's here that is interested in working with the Cape Cod Chamber and the Plymouth Chamber and expanding the coastline, because you can't fix one part of the ocean, it's all connected, and so therefore we are all connected and we're all working on the same beach, essentially, even though there's a few more miles of beach on the Cape. Thank you.
Just for a formal record, I didn't make fun of Cape Cod, and I would never make fun of Cape Cod. But I did make some comments about Cape Cod being peninsular Plymouth, and Plymouth being a continental Cape Cod. So it's reciprocity, really, is what I'm encouraging. Thank you, Katie. And as always, we appreciate your partnership. And I guess it's Nauset who's going to have to save the ocean, right? I am remiss to admit that I did not acknowledge one of my favorite board members from earlier, Rick Veo. Rick Veo, thank you so much for being here. Sorry, Matt. Well, it gives me pleasure to introduce the next speaker, the gentleman who is perhaps the most interesting man in the world for real. He has an impressive CV that includes things like underwater Brett, we're talking about you. Yes. Who else does underwater archaeology? It's you. Also, Brett is responsible for not just building, but also having it sailed here, the Mayflower autonomous ship. Last year, we built our conference around that ship being our ambassador for blue economy, because we wanted to demonstrate that it's not just the low-hanging fruits of kelp and aquaculture. Also, you can build an AI robot ship that sails itself on the same path as the Pilgrims, so perfect, in fact, that it turned back at the same point where the Pilgrims also turned back, but for different reasons. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Brett Phaneuf to the stage.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
I get to press hard to make it quick.
All right. It's giving me defective equipment as usual. So I blame Stephen and Michelle for my being here today to speak to you because I'm gap filling. So any mistakes, or if this is a boring presentation, it's totally their fault. So we're going to talk a little bit about the future, and so what does it look like when we explore the ocean with uncrewed systems? And as Stephen said, I built the Mayflower autonomous ship with a group of engineers that are some of the best engineers in the world, at least in my estimation. And we did it because we wanted to think about what's the next 400 years, right? So we always look back. And that's, I think, a problem we have when we think about history is we forget that it's something that's supposed to propel us forward. So when we thought about Mayflower and the 400th year anniversary in 2020, we thought, 400 years from now, what will they talk about? Probably not this, but we took our shot, right? So we built the Mayflower autonomous ship, but it's one of many, many, many uncrewed systems at sea. And as you can see, just a few things to look at. There's hundreds of these things in service already, cruising around the oceans, collecting data, doing hydrography, tracking fish, tracking weather, contributing to our understanding of the ocean. And in the future, the market's billions and billions of dollars, right, for the development and the application of these things at sea. And they reduce the cost and the barrier to entry to do research at sea. So it's $3 billion, $4 billion in the next, say, 10, 15 years of value. A lot of it's actually going to get created in Massachusetts. A lot of it might get created here in Plymouth. It already is. And there's just a few examples. It's weird having it over here. I can't see, I don't remember what's in my slides because I made these last night. I didn't have a lot of notice, but there's lots of different systems, from a company like Xocean that's got the largest fleet of uncrewed systems operating doing hydrography, to Sail Drone, my ship Mayflower, Martac, which does military, and then you've got SeaTrack that they'll exhibit tomorrow, and people like Green Sea just up the road in Cordage Park. And how does it all work? Well, it works through satellite communication. So when we talk about the sea and we talk about the blue economy, it's actually part of the space economy. We depend on it, just like we do with GPS in our cars. We have to know where and when things happened at sea. So we depend for position and timing and communication for space-based assets. And so the future really is the cooperative behavior of smarter satellites using edge processing and AI, communicating with things on and under the sea to solve problems at the edge and produce information as opposed to data that we can work with. And I'll talk about that a little later, how that's emerging now. But you can do all sorts of things. You can capture data about the environment, about the things the vessels are seeing. You can control the vessels through satellites. Very low bandwidth. We think in gigabytes or megabytes maybe per second. We're able to control things now with kilobytes, 700, 200 kilobytes a second. Very small, tiny amounts of data because the systems on the edge are getting smarter and smarter. You can do more with less. So we don't have to send all the commands back and forth. The ship makes its own decisions, and it tells us how things are going in little bits of information, and that reduces the cost and increases the profitability. And then so the Mayflower is one example of something like this. It's large by comparison to others, although bigger autonomous ships are being built. She's about 50 feet long, and it's actually down at Woods Hole now getting some new scientific equipment put in, and she'll go back to sea before the winter sets in. And then next summer, we'll be doing months of work out off the Massachusetts coastline with Woods Hole, mapping fish migration and tracking whales and looking at the primary productivity of the ocean in conjunction with their seafloor sensors that are collecting data year-round, and then we'll go out and we'll actually act as a data portal. We'll pick up that data acoustically and then transmit it up through space back to shore so that they can respond in real time, because the things sitting on the seafloor can't move. But when they detect something interesting, the ship can go and then follow it, chase it through the ocean, and really see how it evolves as it moves along the coast. And again, just to go back to Mayflower, because that's, again, totally unprepared today. So you're getting a few different things. We had a historical goal, recreate it. We had a technological goal. Can you actually make an autonomous ship cross the ocean? And the answer is yes, on the second attempt, Stephen, thank you for bringing that up. You can make a ship cross the ocean. And then we wanted to collect data, not just about the environment, which is important, but my interest is in, well, how smart does something have to be to cross the ocean safely? And the answer is surprisingly not very smart if you're in the middle of the ocean, but really, really smart if you're in the middle of a harbor that's very, very busy. And so when you think about these things, they're really human-machine teaming. These are, and I'll say this later again, AI is not artificial intelligence, it's augmented human intelligence, right? It's things that help us perform better. That's how we should think about it. These things help us be better humans, to do the human part and not worry about the parts we don't do well, like processing petabytes of data. We don't do that well, but we have insight, which the machines don't. And that was our route, not exactly straight. We got 1,000 miles out, had to detour to the Azores to fix something, and then ran into a storm and had to head for Halifax, made port there, and then came back to Plymouth, and now she's at Woods Hole. And yes, slightly different than the original Mayflower. So somebody asked me, if it was that in 1620 and it's that in 2020, what is it in 2420? I have no idea what it's going to look like. But that one looks like a spaceship because I like Star Wars. So, and I'd be lying if I said that wasn't the inspiration for it. Star Wars, definitely, not Star Trek, Star Wars. And again, it works just like a person would, but it doesn't have a person, right? It's got sensors on the edge. It captures all that, and then we have all these complex models we made with IBM that sort of interpret, well, what are all these things we're seeing with cameras and thermal imaging and radar and AIS, and how do we combine all that into an understanding of what's actually happening around us? And then how do we maintain safe navigation across the ocean? We have to follow all the rules that manned ships follow. And then we have to make a decision about what's the best way to go, taking into account all the things around us and the fact that there's weather and the ocean's moving, and that the ship might have some mechanical problems. And then we have to verify that these things are actually safe to do, and that the ship can do the things one part of the manager wants it to do, the mission manager wants it to do, and then execute them. And so it does that, and it talks to us while it does it, and then we display it. This is the lovely part about the future of technology. Everyone can literally get involved. We could then broadcast from the ship, real time, what was happening to the ship, what was it detecting, what was it sensing around it, was it hearing anything acoustically? We had models running, listening for different species of whales. Did it find anything interesting when it had an optical camera looking at phytoplankton? Did it find unique species? Because in real time it could count them and speciate them and determine what they were. And then we could show people the ocean. Most people never get to the deep sea. Most people never go out there. Now, admittedly, that was a really nice day. We had a lot of really nice days, and which will lull you into a false sense of security when the sea decides to smite you, which it did. But you could see that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week as the ship crosses the ocean, and we broadcast it on a web portal. And we have a little AI chatbot that will talk to people and answer questions about what the ship's detecting. And the nice part about that, we would get these, I would wake up in the middle of the night and I would log into this portal to see, because I'd always wake up like, oh no, it's probably hit something or it's sunk, and I'd panic and I'd log in, and there'd be 30 or 40,000 people watching this, because I could see it, and I thought, who are these weirdos, right? What, in the middle of the night watching this mind-numbing image from the sea, right? And it was almost mesmerizing, and I think it's something people have become so disconnected from, and yet everything you have on your table, everything you interact with every day, the food that we're eating, all these things are shipped to us from somewhere else, and almost all of it by sea. And yet, most people never really appreciate the magnitude of the ocean and what's out there or what isn't. And that's just the surface. The universe below is what the next part we have to discover. And we're working on that. And of course, you can see what's happening. We have all these remote operation centers, but to give you an idea of what remote operation really looks like how sophisticated is it? Well, we can log in through Iridium and we can see the cameras and the course and we can see the decisions it's making. And then when it has a problem and you want to alter a piece of software, and your software engineer is on an airplane crossing the Atlantic Ocean going 500 miles an hour, 38,000 feet in the air, and happens to have a Wi-Fi connection, that's our chief software engineer. You can see he's on that plane in that image, in his seat, and he's connected from the plane to a satellite, to a ground station, through the internet to Iridium, to another satellite, and back down to the ship that's 5 miles beneath him. And he's pushing a software patch to make the ship work a little better. So imagine if you told somebody 25 years ago that you'd be able to do that now. I mean, and we take it for granted every day. So I mean, so where are we going to get to from there? Well, one of the things the ship does, this is actually video, believe it or not. It will move along, I hope. Let's see. Maybe it won't. Yes, there it goes. One of the things it does is it drops other instruments, and this is what, in general, our robotic systems do. So we're looking at the back of the ship as it's crossing. It's low bandwidth because we don't have a lot of satellite communications at this a lot of bandwidth at this range, and we're going to deploy an instrument. Here, I'll show you. Let's see. Will it do it? We know it did it. It's not real time, but we're going to drop a float, and what these things do, there it goes. Now that was so exciting for us when it actually, you have no idea, after days and days of staring at the screen, like just, there was like this, yeah, and then nothing for like days and days more. But what do those floats do? Well, those floats are apex floats. So they have a little buoyancy engine in them, and they're generally thrown off ships of opportunity, or by the Coast Guard, or by NOAA, or now by robotic vessels. And those things go up and down in the water column. They just change their buoyancy slowly, and they drift with the ocean for months and months at a time. And when they come up, they also have a little satellite communication chip in them, and they send us data about that profile through the ocean, about the temperature and the salinity and lots of other factors about the ocean. And in March of this year, just to give you an example, there were almost 4,000 of those active drifting in the ocean, and all of them connected by satellite. So I really mean it when I say if you're involved in the marine industry, you are involved in the space enterprise, right? So and then it's not just those. Then there's companies like SOFAR that make drifting buoys that also do something similar. And then there's big meteorological and oceanographic buoys moored all over the world that are sending scientific data. And then there's gliders, hundreds and hundreds of gliders that fly through the sea using a similar buoyancy engine and wings like gliding aircraft, sending that same data every time they come to the surface. And then there's seafloor installations that we get data from. And then there's literally thousands and thousands and thousands of tagged fish that we track, and we know where they are, and we have data about their life cycle and what the ocean is like where they are. We have so much data you can't imagine it. We're creating data at a rate that's almost unimaginable. We're pushing all the computing processing out to the edge, right? So it's happening where the data is created, which means we're creating information. So we're reducing the demand on the signal we have to send, how much we have to spend to send that information. And we're just now getting to the point that we can process all this in real time and model the entire climate of the planet, and particularly the ocean. We're just now getting that capability with AI and machine learning. I can only imagine what it will be like in 10 years, but there are all these other risks that go with it. For example, we get data bias, right? Sometimes you have too many senses one place or not in another. Sometimes you get, as I said, it's augmented human intelligence, but sometimes you get degraded critical thinking. It's very easy just to believe everything you read on a news site or YouTube or data that you get from a sensor. And if we forget to teach people how to think critically or how to understand the why, this is the what, right? If we don't understand the why, then we're going to make all sorts of incorrect assumptions about what's actually happening in the ocean. So having the data in some cases can make us blind to really understanding what the mechanism in the ocean that is going on. And that's the most important part. And that's what I worry about. It's like I don't worry about artificial intelligence. I worry about the degradation of actual intelligence. more than anything else, right? So, because we don't think about it. Anyway, Stephen, and we're going to build more ships, so that's not the end of it. This ramble is almost over. I appreciate your indulging me. But, so we're building larger ships that are autonomous, 24 plus meters long, to sail the oceans for 14,000 miles continuously and deploy sensors. The military is investing heavily in it. That ship that I just showed you, let's see if it'll go back, that's in construction now. This vessel is in construction by DARPA using the same software that sailed the Mayflower. That's a 60-meter uncrewed frigate, so that's a 180-foot-long vessel with nobody on it that can cruise through the sea and defend the nation. It's the first of its kind. And then there'll be more like Mayflower as well, and more smaller and more interesting vessels and floats. And I think the most interesting thing now is there's no difference anymore in my mind between the data we gather in space, the data we gather in the atmosphere, at the sea surface and subsea. We're actually now just becoming capable of merging in real time all that data into a coherent, complete picture that models the entire climate of the planet. And that should be exciting for everybody, and Plymouth is sort of at the epicenter of it with a lot of the things that are just kicking off now and at this conference. So Stephen, that's it. Did I fill my 15 minutes? All right, great.
I told you he was the most interesting man in the world. Love that you talk about the next 400 years, Brett. I also love that many of my board members are in the room to hear you talk about how the blue economy is tied in many ways to the space economy. In fact, we have some companies in Plymouth that are component part manufacturers for SpaceX even. So in some ways, it's already here. Ladies and gentlemen, I am honored to present to you the next speaker. He is the sponsor of this session that we're all enjoying now with our lunch. For the last 4, going on 5 years now, we've worked very closely, not just to advance economic development in Plymouth, but also how we work together on Peninsular Plymouth, Cape Cod, to advance their opportunities on continental Cape Cod. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. John Cox, Cape Cod Community College.
Thanks, Steve. I'm not sure how we follow demons in the deep as we have our chat and chew session here this morning or this afternoon. As we continue positioning Plymouth as a leader in the nation's blue economy, we recognize that our blue future includes the sea and the sky, with its reach among the maritime technology, aquaculture, aviation technology, workforce development, and supporting the employers and the entrepreneurs, helping continue to meet the educational needs of the people in our community. On behalf of Cape Cod Community College, our trustee chair, Tammy Sabin, our trustee, Laura Newstead, and our former trustee emeritus, Will Shane, I'm truly grateful for the community's embrace a decade ago as we began our journey in aviation maintenance technology and our aviation center at the Plymouth Municipal Airport, a super partner to work with. And I also am very appreciative to the work of Senate President Murray for making our aviation program possible for where we are today. Since going live with aviation technology in fall of 2016, we've empowered several hundred FAA-certified airframe and power plant mechanics, our graduates, pursuing careers in aviation, marine technology, elevator operations, automotives, and many related fields. This year, with Michael Sasso leading our effort in the aviation program, we opened one of only 4 in the nation virtual A320 tech labs in partnership with Airbus. And we'll be starting our avionics certificate program in the upcoming semester. Drone operations and technologies is under development as we speak. As we continue to meet the needs of our community and business, the FAA has expanded our capacity from 75 students to 245 students. And it's important to note, Most students come from our region, and our graduates remain in the broader region when they're done. And through our partnership with Bridgewater State University, we can offer housing and now transportation between Bridgewater State and the Aviation Center, thanks to the work of Senator Moran and our delegation and the administration. Thank you much for making that possible. Since we are sea-deep in innovation, recognize that Cape Cod Community College continues to serve the higher education needs of nearly 6,000 credit and non-credit students annually through in-person classes, high school pathways, and online and high-flex courses that provide flexibility for our students given the demands on their lives. With over 275 professional faculty and staff, teaching 40 degree concentrations and 45 certificate programs under the leadership of Vice President Kathy Varenos and STEM Dean Ben Latigo and Dean Christine McCary, including programs through our Center for Corporate and Professional Education under the leadership of Tammy Jacobson, we have the expertise and imagination to serve our community's needs. In addition to our marine engine technology program, marine coding training, introductory training for turbines and others, our programs in the blue economy, engineering and advanced manufacturing, the STEM fields, cybersecurity, culinary and hospitality, nursing, dental hygiene, and the allied health fields all serve our students and our community's needs. In many ways, 4Cs is uniquely able to adapt quickly and respond to changes in the market, and we like to be proactive. Clearly, a part of the blue future is demonstrated through our toilet of the future. You know I couldn't give it up. Given the wastewater issue that we're dealing with, particularly on the Cape, we have a partnership with the Gates Foundation Reinvent the Toilet Global Competition winner, Caltech, with the first commercial application in North America of the closed-loop electrolysis treatment system that is incorporated into our new Science and Engineering Center. So I want to formally invite you. Hey, it's all part of the blue economy. I want to formally invite you to experience the future of blue. Stop by and try it out at your convenience. But the other point I want to make is when you're on campus walking around, you'll notice we banned plastic bottle sales over 2 years ago because ultimately we know the likelihood of them ending up in our oceans and on our beaches. What we do is also about enabling our students, our neighbors, to help develop their sense of purpose and meaning through the education and support services that we provide. Services that may entail tutoring, mental health support, food, housing, and transportation. And I'm reminded, thinking back to our first aviation class in 2016, one of our students literally was living out of his aging Dodge van. We were able to support our student. We made sure he had food and access to good hygiene. He thrived through the program. He secured a career opportunity, and he is solidly able to live a middle-class life with continued aspiration. And that's really what it's all about through our work at the community college. As an institution, the community college is preoccupied with serving our community's need while remaining accessible, enhancing racial equity, and staying affordable. Having had the opportunity to be with Lieutenant Governor Driscoll and the governor at the rollout of Mass Reconnect back in March, I hear. It's really a big deal, it really is. This transformational policy is enabling access for students and upskilling for current and future careers Through Mass Reconnect, students 25 and older can attend college for free, assuming they don't already have a degree. It's a commitment for many, returning to school a little bit later in life, balancing life's demands, family's demands, and taking at least 2 courses a semester. Tactically, the new policy requires students to complete their federal FAFSA application for financial aid. This leverages the state funding, as we witnessed a nearly 25% increase in FAFSA applications during the fall semester at Cape Cod Community College, along with an increase in the eligibility for Pell Grant assistance. In addition, our retention has increased and our enrollment is up 14%. It's been a long, long time since our enrollment's been up 14%. It's truly a game changer, and it's been empowered by our Lieutenant Governor and the Governor and our legislative delegation, and it is certainly demonstrating how we can strengthen the middle class. Thinking about how our experiences shape our lives and trying to build a entryway here to my introduction of the Lieutenant Governor, I recall that in an earlier time, Lieutenant Governor Driscoll saw a face stuck in a streetlight in Salem. And if you Google this, you'll find that it's true. In speaking with some of my spirited Salem colleagues, they said they thought it might be the face of Ichabod Crane. Now, you may remember him from an earlier trek in Sleepy Hollow, New York. You know that SUNY system place over there? No doubt, after turbulent living in New York, Ichabod took his neighbor's advice going east, perhaps more in spirit than in mind and body, going east in search of opportunity. Seeing that face stuck in the Salem streetlight gets one thinking about breaking free, starting anew. It's that thinking percolating through the mind of possibilities as one sees the notion of attracting slightly older, more seasoned neighbors back to college. Breaking free of the lamp to be the light shining, the beacon of hope, the fresh start moment, that mass reconnection. Now, if that justification doesn't work for the roots of public policy and a segue to introduce the 73rd Lieutenant Governor, let me shift a little bit. Kim Driscoll, the former mayor of Salem, took office at a time when Salem was bewitched with record deficits, poor financial management, and a declining bond rating. Having studied government at Salem State, she pursued her career in municipal government and brought a wealth of experience to the city. A mother of 3 children, she chaired the Salem School Committee as mayor and pushed for the collaboration and strategies to improve Salem schools and for added investment to support teachers and students. Under her leadership, Salem became one of the first communities in Massachusetts to adopt the expansion of free, high-quality early education opportunities starting at age 4. As mayor, she turned deficits into record surpluses and saved taxpayers money by strengthening city services, revitalizing the downtown area, leading a vast improvement in K-12 schools, and bringing transparency to City Hall. Recognizing her work with Governor Healy to create a forward-looking Commonwealth and communities that work for, empower, and include all who call Massachusetts home, I am delighted to welcome Lieutenant Governor Kim Driscoll.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. So thrilled to be with you. You cannot make up this type of history. I mean, when it comes to places like Plymouth and Salem, and I'm just so grateful to be a part of it this afternoon and all the work that you're doing. What happens on the ground in communities is really important to me as someone who's been a former mayor as Dr. Cox mentioned, but also as someone who believes in the strength of this Commonwealth, really comes from 351 cities and towns. And when our communities are thriving, our Commonwealth is thriving, and feel really grateful to be joined here by members of the legislature, Representative Cutler and Lenatra, Representative Muratori, Senator Moran. I know we've got Plymouth County Commissioner Greg Hanley here, and then former Senate President, who we had a lot of good time with, my Senator Fred Berry, Senate President Terry Murray, and I saw the Register of Deeds was here earlier, John Buckley. The connections between being able to work with local officials, state legislative delegation, our partners, I think that's where the synergy really happens, where we can really advance the work underway in all of our communities. And as the former mayor of Salem, I know the blue economy is very real, very powerful force for revitalizing communities. Salem, like Plymouth, is one of the coastal communities whose maritime economy helped the city rise to great prominence and wealth. That was part of our identity. In Salem, long after the great age of sail, the city's waterfront became home to a coal-fired power plant. It was back in 1950, what was known for a while as one of the Filthy Five. Now that same site is a cleaner natural gas facility, the most efficient natural gas plant in the country when it opened a few years ago. It's got a hard stop at 2050 with the idea of having a bridge to a new type of energy, and really grateful that Salem is poised to become an offshore wind marshaling and construction facility. And in one lifetime, we've seen coal, gas, offshore wind, in the same port that welcomes ferries for water transportation back and forth between Boston, cruise ships to welcome tourists and visitors who find our history very unique. It can happen, but it takes this commitment, focus and sustained collaboration between government, the private sector, and the innovation economy to revive potential waterfront for the 21st century, just like what we're seeing here in Plymouth. The opportunities all that long ago really driving our way forward. And frankly, that's what we're focused on trying to achieve for all of the Massachusetts coastline. I'm really fortunate to be partnered up with Governor Maura Healey. She was a can-do Attorney General. We feel grateful to be part of the first all-female team in the corner office. Thank you from the ladies. And we are centering climate in all that we're doing, and that means something special for our waterfront communities. It means that we're going to be a leader in creating a clean, ocean-focused economy. It's been key to our identity for centuries, and we see opportunities going forward between all of our industries, including commercial fishing, trade and transportation, energy production. The state runs off the work done at our waterfront in so many ways. Our workforce depends on the jobs we create at our ports, and our local businesses are dependent on the revenue that comes from these waterfronts. Our people and our communities really value what our waters mean from a source of enjoyment. It adds to our quality of life. That's why our administration is committed to working with our municipalities on climate resiliency through the Seaport Economic Council, which I'm proud to chair, and the Massachusetts Dredging Program. We need to make sure we're keeping these waterways open and available. Both of those live under the Executive Office of Economic Development. We've got other grant programs like dams and seawalls, the Municipal Vulnerability Program, MVP. For anyone who's part of a local government, you know how invaluable those programs have become to help us as we think about coastal resiliency. These programs support waterfront infrastructure investments in our coastal communities. They drive growth in our marine industry businesses and build climate resiliency. And through these initiatives, we've provided much needed funding and support for the communities that want to invest and improve their working waterfronts. Also critical for tourism, for coastal resiliency, and maritime innovation. As the former mayor of a city that's a little busy in October, we are really grateful, both the governor and I, to reinvest in tourism and to be able to have a comprehensive statewide tourism plan for our coastal communities for sure, but for all parts of the Commonwealth. There are places in Western Mass that see more visitors from New York than they do from Greater Boston. We want to change that. We have all these special and unique places and this amazing history throughout our Commonwealth. And if we don't tell those stories, folks, nobody else will. And when people are here visiting, they're also spending money, contributing to our local economy, helping drive some of that innovation, and leading us in a way that we think is powerful. These grant programs that I just mentioned also help us address climate threats. And coming off one of the hottest summers on record and celebrated Climate Week just last month, We're also mindful of the urgent action that's needed around climate change to prepare our waterfront communities for threats like sea level rise and powerful storms and storm surge and erosion and more. We need to help our state reach our climate goals and advance our economic growth and prosperity. That's an and. And that's where all of you come in. I'm fond of saying that great cities don't happen by accident. It takes intentional focus and a shared vision and collaboration. Opportunities like the Plymouth Foundation, in working with educational partners like Cape Cod Community College, local governments coming together, all chasing that same North Star. To have the courage to use all of that innovation that brought people here back in 1620 and those that were here before them to drive and guide our future. I can tell you that Governor Healy and I have made addressing climate change a vital part of our administration. I want you to know that we are committed to partnering with waterfront communities to address this issue, to ensure we have the type of resources we need to weather the challenges that climate change poses to maritime economies, to neighborhoods, and to populations. Last month, the governor signed 2 executive orders. One established a requirement that state agencies end the purchase of single-use plastics. I'm glad that Cape Cod Community College did that 2 years ago. We were glad to join you in that. And that's an action that we can take as a state. We felt like that was important. The other one delivers the strongest biodiversity policy in America today. It calls for long-term conservation goals for coastal and marine biodiversity and sets Massachusetts up to thrive well into the future. We simply believe we can drive economy, drive maritime, and be good stewards of our coast and meet our resiliency goals. Just last week, we announced Resilient Mass. This is our whole-of-government approach to resiliency in every agency. This is a FEMA-required plan. In order for any state to qualify for FEMA reimbursement or for FEMA dollars to help address prevention of issues tied to the weather, you have to have this plan completed every 5 years. This was not just some check-the-box exercise for us. We really wanted to make sure we're thinking about ways we can future-proof our infrastructure going forward, whether that's prevention, adaptation, mitigation. All of those tools need to be in our toolkit as we move forward. And through this whole of government strategy, every agency commits to taking action. That might be the MBTA updating its design standards, or establishing an Office of Climate Science so that our communities are making the most informed decisions with the best available climate data, or partnering with NOAA and WHOI on amazing information they have for mapping out what's happening in our communities tied to rising seas and what we can do to work together to prevent, mitigate, and adapt the worst of what can come. Resilient Mass also commits us to taking a regional approach to coastal resilience that will be led by the Office of Coastal Zone Management. Let's face it, the climate challenge doesn't stop at any city or town line, and it demands of us to come together and think through the tough questions in partnership across municipal boundaries. I know that firsthand. When I was mayor of Salem, we partnered up with the neighboring community in Beverly to ensure that we were thinking about the uniqueness of Salem Sound and how we could work together to address those needs. I want to thank all of you for the work you're doing to help us strengthen the maritime economy, promote economic development, support a resilient infrastructure in all of our 78 Massachusetts communities. The work underway in Plymouth, leveraging the blue economy for smart economic development growth, is right in the sweet spot of what we see emerging here in Massachusetts for economic development activity. This provides an opportunity for our proud past to guide our strategic future. And it's led by efforts like yours that are underway. Thank you for all you're doing to not only make sure individuals from near and far understand the value of these important spaces, but more importantly, to leverage them for the innovation, the economic development that's going to drive our future. So grateful to be with all of you and thankful for the work you're undertaking every day to make Massachusetts a special place to live, work, and visit. Thank you.
I had the distinct pleasure of having Lieutenant Governor also be my mayor when I lived in Salem prior to taking this job. It was a painful decision to leave, but I think I did the right thing, Lieutenant Governor.
Yes, you did.
Because Plymouth is doing some amazing things. We're going to open up the floor, some questions and answers. If anybody has any, raise your hand. We'll run a microphone over to you. Is that okay?
Yeah,
Okay.
sure, absolutely. It's a shy, quiet group. I like that. All right.
Madam Lieutenant Governor, thank you. Oh, would you like to go first? Good morning, everybody. I'm Representative Josh Cutler. Pleased to be here. Thank you so much for joining us. We're really delighted. This is sort of a softball, as it were, but I wondered if this is an important week here in Massachusetts that ties in directly to what we're talking about today. I wonder if maybe you could talk about some of the things you're leading on and the administration is leading on in this important week.
Yeah, we kicked off STEM Week this morning, actually, at the Jenga building at Boston University. It's their computer and data center. And STEM Week for us is an opportunity to make sure all of our students in Massachusetts realize the value of science, technology, engineering, and math. We have a STEM council that I'm fortunate enough to co-chair that really tries to drive the scaffolding between what's happening on the ground in educational settings from middle school and high school and industry needs, whether that's training teachers, understanding how we can give students an experience as apprenticeships and internships. They can understand all this innovation that's happening, how it ties into math and science that they're learning today. We can make sure our students are getting those cutting edge experiences. It's really heartwarming to see the passion that our students have for this space, and most importantly, to know that it's going to be driving part of our workforce. I'm definitely a believer in if you want to see what type of workforce you're going to have tomorrow, go check out a classroom today. And in our case, we want to make sure our classrooms are doing all that we can to support the innovation economy, and that means a lot more STEM. Thanks for that, Rep. Cutler. Appreciate it. And Rep. Cutler's a member of the STEM Council as well. Yeah, sure. I don't know if anyone's got a mic. Why don't you? Oh, there you go.
Hi, I'm Susan Bryant from the Cohasset Center for Student Coastal Research, and there's an idea I'd like to pitch, so I'll ask it as a question.
Okay.
How might we make it so that when there's government-funded projects in our towns, that they include job shadowing and apprentices and internships? So at least one opportunity for youth anytime there's government money spent on projects in a town over whatever a certain amount. How might we go about getting that to happen?
You know, I love that idea, and I'm going to raise two things. One, we just formed a municipal partnership to make sure all of the federal dollars that are coming out of the Inflation Reduction Act, that communities are aware. Many cities and towns are eligible to apply for those dollars themselves. We want to make sure you're aware of that. You know what might be a sweet spot for your community, and that we help with some technical assistance. So that's one piece of this puzzle. The second part is we've also started a Youth Climate Corps. And these students are really geared up to help us think about how we can be a greater sense of urgency tied to the climate crisis, and how we can be more embedded with what's happening in our communities with their peers. And I think that might be a great place for this to live. Young adults, I think, respond better to other young adults, and connecting that student voice to what might be happening in their communities so that they can have an opportunity, whether it's job shadowing, just knowing that it's happening and helping us build awareness. I think I'm going to bring that back to our Youth Climate Corps. Thanks for raising it. Appreciate it.
Hi there. Stacy Messier from CIC. We are huge proponents of offshore wind, and we are incredibly excited about the MOU that came out a few weeks ago across our, 3 states. And I'm super curious, in talking with folks within the industry, there is a moment where we're really, really excited about what could happen with the MOU, but we're also excited to see what things you might believe are missing that could help bring that to reality. So we want to see better procurement, and we want to see the 3 states working together, but what do you see as the area of opportunity?
Yeah, just so folks are cued in on what we're talking about, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts put out an RFP soliciting bid interest for our latest round of megawatts to be delivered through offshore wind. And we have partnered up with 2 adjoining states in that effort, which means that we're going to have the largest amount of megawatts being sought and solicited from offshore wind, from clean energy in the country's history. Like, pretty phenomenal to be able to combine the power of collaboration. And for us, it's about obviously providing clean power as affordably as we can. That's huge in order to allow us to meet our climate goals. But the second part of that is, how can it drive our economy? What are the ways that when we think about an offshore wind industry, and I'll use Salem as an example, where are our ports? How do they become assets? That port I mentioned that had one of the filthy 5, well, it didn't land in Marblehead Neck, or it didn't land in the Gold Coast of Manchester by the Sea. It was in a community that was a gateway city that had a pretty diverse population. And don't get me wrong, I'm sure in 1950 we were happy to have that power plant come. It provided jobs, it provided tax revenues, not unlike Pilgrim. The Pilgrim plant, I remember talking with your former town manager a bit about these resources and how they help drive down taxes, but we know what they left behind. Certainly with respect to the types of energy we're talking about. So we hope going forward that more people will win. We're going to have a clean energy future that will be able to connect that to good jobs and drive our economy, and also think about those underserved populations, those economically disadvantaged communities, that it provides an opportunity for growth and a future workforce, meeting those future workforce needs there. The RFP's out. I hope we hope there's a robust response to it. I think we want to make sure that as many companies as possible, weigh in and help us drive this energy future. And for us, making sure more people win at the outset of it, I think is what's really critical. I appreciate the question.
Hello, I'm Sheila Vaughn. I'm the Director of Admissions at Cape Cod Community College. I'm also a selectman in my town of Kingston with Kathleen Anatra, and I was on school committee for 10 years. So
you're speaking my love language.
I love language. And I just want to say, as the Director of Admissions over at Four Seas, how much that you've done for us, and I hope to do more, but the Mass Reconnect has been exponentially, I'm on the ground here, and seeing it work on the ground has been amazing, but also for the undocumented students and also for the nursing. I'm on the ground seeing it firsthand, how it's changing lives for students. I really love to see it come down to all students getting free community college, but also using the funds in those in our towns, being more STEM oriented as we get into the vocational high schools. And I love that you're fully funding Chapter 70 funds, and you've done so much for education, not just for the colleges, but also for the K through 12. As a person who is on the ground doing this, and I really do appreciate all you've done. I don't think Chapter 70's ever been fully funded until this year, so I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much. Like local government, given my experience, is definitely where the rubber hits the road. I'm fond of saying no hiding in local government, right? You've got to just do the work. And I think Governor recognizes the importance of these investments. We really do feel like we're saving community colleges. A lot of our community colleges, we're not seeing the growth that we know that individuals really could benefit from. And there's a reason we picked this program, Mass Reconnects, with over the age of 25. And that's because 750,000 residents in Massachusetts over the age of 25 have some credentialing, meaning they started college, but life got in the way, and we saw an opportunity. Many of those were single-headed household women, and we saw an opportunity by breaking down that barrier, by making it free, to create not only a pathway for people to better provide for their families, but an opportunity to drive upskilling and reskilling and make sure the jobs of the future and the jobs of today are being filled with a skilled workforce. It's been a win-win, and as a public higher ed grad myself, this infusion of energy and excitement for our local community colleges, which is also going to help serve our public higher ed institutions, because most of our community colleges are feeders for that program. We couldn't be more thrilled, and really want to thank everyone for their commitment. The budget got approved, in a little bit late in the summer, and everybody just went to work and said, we're going to make this happen. And I think next semester we're going to even see even higher enrollment. So keep up the great work on the ground. Appreciate it. Over here. Sure. Sorry.
Hi there. I'm Steve Tom from Falmouth, originally from San Diego, so the other coast. Obviously, we've been talking about a lot of different kinds of infrastructure, which is one of my interests. Is there any way the state can, if not mandate, strongly encourage communities across the state to adopt the dig once policy? Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, I am. Yeah.
Every time you dig up the ground, you make sure you have a master plan to lay in conduit for fiber optics, for offshore power, for anything you have to put in the ground, so we stop hanging it on poles that blow down in the wind.
Yeah.
I don't see how we can meet our potential for the future if we don't do something to expedite the support of this rather boring thing called cables and pipes in the ground. But a simple policy, I realize there's a cost, but it's in the end, it's a much more cost-effective way to put utilities in the ground. Can we do anything to get a dig once policy on a statewide basis?
Yeah, the joys of being in a nearly 400-year-old state is that you have 400-year-old infrastructure, and those connections all exist and in a hodgepodge sort of way. I think communities really struggle with the approach of a one dig. I say that as a former mayor myself. You want to do as much as you can, but you have limited resources. And if you're going to pave a road, are you going to be able to tackle the water, the sewer, the drainage, all of the conduit? All of those are oftentimes different agencies, right? The cable is somebody else from the telephone, is somebody else from the internet, and from those water and sewer utilities. So it's really difficult to think of a comprehensive policy that would be geared towards bringing everything underground, as much as it might be a worthwhile idea to explore. Right now, we're worried about the transmission we have, not only in Massachusetts, but frankly, region-wide. If the country was developed, west to east as opposed to east to west, all of New England would likely be one state, right? But we're not, but our transmission system, our grid, our power generation is thought of in a regional way. And so our first effort is trying to make sure we have reliability and that we're thinking about efficient. Right now, if all the offshore wind that we're out with the RFP came online, like tomorrow, miraculously, we wouldn't have a transmission grid system that could handle that. It's not ready and prepared for that. So we've got to future-proof that area. I think certainly first and foremost, while we think about ways we might be able to meld together, whether it's fiber owned separately, water and sewer owned separately, natural gas, a different utility. Getting all of those folks together to think about that would be lovely, but I think it's really, really hard, just to be honest. I don't want to end on that note. Come on, let's end on something happy, okay, and uplifting.
Hi, thank you. Judith Underwood from Blue Institute Labs. Steve, happy to talk about wastewater. I'm a wastewater commissioner in my community, but we work with entrepreneurs from around the world, actually, that are climate tech and blue tech.
Great.
And we're very focused on creating a Blue Innovation Center for Massachusetts in Chelsea, on Boston Harbor at Winnisimmet.
Yeah, sure.
And I'd love to just put a seed in the back of your head to think about how the state could financially help seed some of these startups to bring them to Massachusetts, because clearly the tax incentive is not going to work for them for at least 5 years, right? So.
I really appreciate that question. And so I worked for the City of Chelsea as their chief legal counsel when they came out of receivership. Some of you may remember City of Chelsea, just north of Boston, 2 square miles, was placed in receivership some 20 plus years ago. I was their legal counsel, then I became their deputy city manager. So it's got a near and dear special place in my heart. And the Clean Energy Center recently has new leadership. The person who's coming on to lead the Clean Energy Center was the same person who was the founder of Greentown Labs. And these are innovation hubs that help, I think, have really put Massachusetts at the forefront of both clean energy and, for us, opportunities around the blue economy. And Chelsea Creek, long sought after space that has had a heavy industrial use. Couldn't think of a better place to sort of think about how do we drive innovation. And I think that gets back to my earlier point. The Salems of the world, the Chelseas of the world, the places that we've put all the stuff that nobody else really wanted. If we're going to drive innovation, make clean energy work, build a green and blue economy, let's do it in the places that paid the price for all the stuff that wasn't so great. Make sure more people are winning, more job opportunities, and really make sure the entire Commonwealth thrives. And I'll say, while we're in coastal communities, there are lots of opportunities for places that have nothing to do with the coast to benefit from a green economy. And that is important to us. Holyoke, Mass, far, far away from the coast. 80% of the world's paper was produced in Holyoke, Massachusetts at one point. They have amazing bones left in terms of mills and space and some of the cleanest power tied to those dams and waterways in our Commonwealth. We don't have to make choices of picking winners and losers. Our goal as we create this new innovative economy is to make sure those underserved populations, the places that sometimes got left behind, life sciences is amazing. We are saving lives with our life sciences industry. We are curing diseases. And there's a lot of good things happening in Kendall Square. How do we spread that out? The next wave of innovation means more people need to win. And I can't think of a better state to take it on than right here in Massachusetts. We're doing everything we can to leverage federal resources. We've got a great governor who is making sure we are competitive, we're affordable, we're equitable. She's driving our team and ensuring as we think about the future, it's not just one region, it's not just one set of circumstances. It's making sure that Massachusetts works for and welcomes all. I'm really proud to be a part of it, but it doesn't happen without people on the ground. Local government, community colleges, organizations coming together. That's our strength. That's our tapestry, and that's why I'm proud to be here with all of you. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. And for those of you who don't know or haven't been to Salem, overlooking the power plant that the Lieutenant Governor was talking about is one of the best places in town to watch the sunset. It's called Dead Horse Beach. Look it up. It's real.
Yeah.
And it's where I asked my
Dead
fiance to
horses.
marry me. And I'm getting married next year. So, Dead Horse Beach, everyone. Beautiful. I'm gonna hand this to you. John, would you like to approach the stage? In economic development parlance, some of you may have heard anchor institution used a time or two. It's one of those things that are built into the fabric of a community. They advance economic development, they create job opportunities, they train employees or potential employees so that they can take an active role in the economy. The Economic Development Foundation is thrilled to have a partnership with Cape Cod Community College. We don't have a full-time college campus based in Plymouth. We have wonderful partners at Quincy College and Curry College. But you heard a little bit ago about some of the investment that Cape Cod Community College has made in Plymouth. And therefore, on behalf of the Economic Development Foundation, it's my honor to present to you the Anchor Institution Award. Thank you, John. Thank you, trustees, for investing in Plymouth. Thank you for your partnership, and thank you so much for helping us advance our economy and workforce development.